Welcome to the HRIS Careers podcast with your host, Troy Wallace, a podcast for human resources information systems professionals to help you elevate your HRIS career. We always say no one gets into HRIS on purpose, but it sure is interesting to find out how they did. We interview your HRIS peers to find out how they got tricked into the industry and what lessons and tools they use to progress their careers along the way. We discuss industry trends, AI, and even talk candidly about all the most popular HRIS platforms. Just think of it as the closest bar just outside the entrance of your favorite HR technology conference. Now you get it. Welcome in. In this episode, we're going to dig into just I'll call it a little bit more general career advice. Obviously, the name of the podcast is HRIS Careers, so it certainly is applicable. But this may be, if you want to forward this on to someone else, maybe applicable to all careers. I took this little nugget from Scott Galloway, who is commonly known as Prof G. He's got a podcast called the Prof G Podcast. I enjoy it. He's a little irreverent, not for everybody, but someone that I like. He's an adjunct professor at NYU and also has been a pretty successful entrepreneur and also has a top 10 or 20 business podcast. Periodically, he will give people career advice on his Q&A sessions, and I pulled this one out, and I thought it was pretty powerful. His quote was, "Be seen and get a reputation as the person who speaks well and talks positively about others behind their back." I'm going to play the clip from his show, and you can hear it in his own words.
Be seen and get a reputation as the person that speaks well, that talks well of people behind their back. Listen, try and really promote other people's interests. The key to being successful, I think, is to develop allies along the way. And that is, people will find out. I assume that I think it's just a safe assumption that everyone will hear eventually everything you say about them. So it's one thing to provide feedback, constructive feedback to people in a professional situation, but for the most part, you want to talk up your colleagues. You want to be there for them.
So there's a lot of reasons that I love this advice. Workplaces are just kind of like small towns. People talk. Everything has a way of making it back to other people within the company. So if that's the case, why not make sure that what people hear about you is that you're someone who lifts others up? We all know someone at work who always has something negative to say about others, and let's be honest, do you really trust that person? Probably not. So I'll give you some real life experience I had, and this was real early in my career. I was probably a year or two out of college, and I had a pretty eye-opening experience. So I was an HR generalist, like I said, 1 or 2 years out of college, and safety and risk manager that I really thought I had a good relationship with said something unflattering about me, and she didn't realize that I had heard it. I was just around the corner heading into the training room where we were doing a training session, and a couple people were talking, and there was just enough delay that she likely didn't know that I had heard. Later in my life, it's something that I probably would have confronted. Maybe it's another lesson. I always say confront a bully. So I might have confronted them privately, but they were a manager, not my direct boss, but 15 years my senior. And man, it just felt awful. So, especially because this is somebody I held in pretty high regard, and I thought were definitely one of my supporters. So I can't even recall what it was. It wasn't something that was hugely negative, but I just remember being really disappointed more than anything. But then the opposite is also true, right? When you have a reputation for championing others, or people see you as an ally, someone they want to work with and even promote. I've personally seen this play out in HRIS teams or other parts of the organization. And when I heard this advice, I really wanted to highlight it. I thought it was worth doing call this a short episode on the HRIS Careers podcast. And I thought I'd come up with a few things on how you can put this into practice. How do you actually get caught saying something nice? So there's a few ways.
1.
Give credit publicly. If someone on your team solves a tricky HRIS issue, just don't say good job in private. Bring it up in a meeting or in an email or to leadership. They don't actually have to be in the room necessarily, but just the fact that you're talking about them, even when they're not there, I think reflects even more positively on you. Number 2,
2.
when someone's name comes up, say something positive. If a colleague's work is being discussed, take the opportunity to highlight something that they did well. Number
3.
3, pass along praise. So if a client or another team member says something nice about a coworker, make sure that that message gets back to them. It makes people feel really good to hear that people said something nice about them when they were not in the room. Number 4,
4.
use Slack, Teams, email to recognize people. So I had an instance of this. I was working with a client and they had a public system where you could shout people out for doing positive things. And it was just kind of a random help desk person who was really helpful. I had access to their little kudos, I'll call it a kudos system. And I took 3 minutes to shout them out on that system. Number 5.
5.
If you do have feedback, try and make it constructive. This doesn't mean never giving criticism. It means making sure that when you do, it's framed in a way that's helpful and hopefully not hurtful. Why does this matter for career growth? Career success isn't just about what you do. It's about the relationships you build. When people feel like you're in their corner, they become allies. And those allies, they're the ones who vouch for you, recommend you for promotions, and want to work with you. So I would say Scott Galloway is right. The key, or one of the keys to being successful, is developing allies along the way. And the easiest way to do that is be the person who speaks positively about others. Just in closing, here's a challenge for you this week. Find at least one opportunity to get caught saying something nice about a colleague. Maybe it's in a meeting. Maybe it's in a casual conversation. Just give it a try and make a concerted effort to do it once this week. And if you do, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a message, troy.wallace@HRISCareers.com. Or if you want to comment on YouTube or Spotify, we certainly appreciate that, or on LinkedIn. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this. It's a little nugget, what I call a short-episode. Share this with a friend. This definitely applies to really anyone in a professional career. It's not necessarily HRIS. So again, as always, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for tuning in to HRIS Careers podcast, and we'll talk to you all later.
Here we go.